Legitimate protest or outright harassment. A British arms manufacturer is accusing anti-war activists of intimidating its employees with similar tactics used by animal rights extremists against scientists.
The tactics are the same. Yeah. I mean, and a lot of these groups are very modelled on the RA.
I think it was a definite strategy of EDO and their lawyers to say this case is just like the animal rights protesters.
EDO MBM, which makes weapons parts, is seeking a High Court injunction tomorrow to stop the protesters getting near its plant.
The thing was that most of us involved in the campaign had never even heard of these things until it happened.
Legal papers shown for the first time to Channel 4 News allege a deliberate hate campaign against staff, but that is strongly denied by the protesters.
For 14 months now we've had demonstrations outside our premises, many of which have gone beyond what I consider to be reasonable.
Everybody had ever been arrested at EDO, at any of the blockades, whether they've been found guilty or not guilty. They all received in the post 3 huge lever arch files of evidence.
The directors at EDO will turn to the High Court tomorrow, citing the Protection Against Harassment Act, a law commonly used against stalkers. They're seeking an exclusion zone around the factory in Brighton and around the homes of their employees.
Now, when does lawful protest become intimidation?
Timothy Lawson-Cruttenden was involved in drafting, in giving advice and drafting the Protection from Harassment Act.
I suppose under this Act, and the way we've developed the law on this Act, is to take civil disobedience, which is okay, and ask the court to make it contempt.
What Timothy Lawson-Cruttenden, obviously who'd thought this out all along, was able to do was to basically define corporations as people. And bring about the idea that protesters were effectively stalking a corporation.
We've suffered from regularly noise protests once a week rather. That involves banging a drum, banging pots and pans, shouting at our staff when they leave at the end of their day.
What I think is significant about the Harassment Act is that the injunctions under the Act have a criminal power of arrest. That's the first thing, which is quite novel.
The aim of these injunctions is to create these areas where if you don't obey that, then the police can just arrest you.
The injunction that was sought by EDO went way beyond drawing the balance between lawful and unlawful conduct.
EDO were asking for an exclusion zone of half a mile around the factory, which protesters couldn't enter. And remember, you know, a protester could be anybody that EDO deemed to be a protester.
So, for example, it had the consequence that one of the people who'd been involved in the protests over a long period of time wouldn't have been able to actually go to his own home. It's as crazy as that.
The injunction will only have allowed 10 or less people every Thursday afternoon for 2 hours to demonstrate silently outside the factory.
Their intention was that it would apply to absolutely everybody.
An injunction against the world.
The entire basis that the injunction was being brought against us was wrong, because it took away our right to protest.
I mean, is it not a dangerous area, though, of restricting protest?
No, I don't think so. I think we fully accept everybody's right to protest. Fortunately, we live in a democracy and that's one of people's rights.
EDO MBM, a company in Brighton that makes parts for the defence industry, has been granted an exclusion zone around its premises.
The High Court has told protesters that
Judge Gross, who was presiding over this hearing, said freedom of expression is a right jealously guarded in English law, and he didn't allow most of the terms of the injunction.
What was originally a law that was designed to protect people from stalkers became basically a charter for corporations to get a sort of form of PFI martial law outside their premises, and it meant that demonstrations became confined to this narrow strip of grass that bordered a big drop onto a railway line.
Right, they're going to try and impose this interim injunction, and it's nonsense and it restricts our freedom to protest, and we're not going to have any of it.
In the lead up to when the interim injunction came came into force. Protests had grown against Lido MBM. People had heard about the interim injunction and people were very angry about it.
We held a demonstration and it was billed as the big one, and it certainly was a big one.
The intention was to really give the injunction a good hiding by the protesters.
We knew that the order for the interim injunction had finally been signed and that it was going to come into place, but we weren't sure about what the effect of that order was going to be.
So we started at the bottom of the hill that led up to the factory.
So we set off on the grass verge a bit further back.
At that point, this man appears.
With another man filming him.
He looked a bit funny. He had this little moustache.
And a bald head.
Monkey suit.
He's obviously not a policeman.
Order number 1, serve.
What's this?
Who are you, sir? Order number 2, serve.
Nobody knew what was going on. He didn't discuss his role.
We're the Indie News Wire. Who are you, sir?
He then started going round.
Order number 1 served, order number 2 served.
Order number 4, serve. Tell us who you are.
Most people didn't know who this man was. Most people thought he was a policeman or he was an officer of the court, a bailiff, something like that. They had no idea who he was or what he was trying to do, and they had no idea what was going to happen.
From the outset, some people said, no, I'm not taking that, I'm not having anything to do with it.
These were the injunctions.
Serving an injunction consists of touching someone with a piece of paper. Doesn't matter if they understand it or read it or know what it is. Just that they've been touched by the piece of paper.
Slap.
Served.
The idea of that was that once it's served on people, they then, in theory, know what the injunction is, and so breaking it then becomes a crime.
The way he did it was aggressive, but it was funny because a lot of people were just running away from him and he was too slow to catch up with them.
It all looked very ludicrous. As far as we were concerned, this great big bald thug was just wandering around assaulting people.
If that touches you, it's been served. It's your property. Number 13, served.
How many numbers do you know? He's harassing people.
While I'm standing, if I had seen an assault, I would have dealt with it. I didn't see an assault.
People asked the police who this man was who was trying to serve these bits of paper on them and weren't given that information.
Serving it on you, so your property. If anyone...
We later found out that this was Mark Lynch, one of the top dogs for Guardian Guard security.
But this was kind of what would become one of the regular themes at these demonstrations.
Being punched in the chest in the guise of being served an injunction.
That's kind of set the tone for Mark Lynch, the wonderful Mark Lynch. He then continued in that vein for many months.
This probably should have been a taste of things to come.
The march moved off and people walked up Home Farm Road and marched up to the factory like they had done many times before.
Were really quite passionate because this was, as it was the first time the injunction had been put in force, this was a kind of test of, the will of the protesters versus the strength of the police. And there was, in fact, quite a massive police presence up there.
Police vans kept arriving, just more and more police vans.
The policing tactics radically changed on that day.